of our vacation. Day 2? No, it's day 3.
Day 3.
Day 3 of our vacation. We have left the Swan Song Inn. We had a wonderful time staying there. Watch for a video for that. And now we are on our way to Mansfield, Missouri, where we're going to visit the home of Laura and Almanzo Wilder. So Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote the Little House on the Prairie books, her husband Almanzo, and then also their daughter Rose Wilder Lane lived on Rocky Ridge Farm. So we're going to go out there and we're going to visit Rocky Ridge Farm today. So come along with us. Stay on the road, puppet. So I'm here today with Vicki. We're here at the Laura Ingalls Wilder Museum and Visitor Center here in Mansfield, Missouri. And I was sharing with Vicki that before we start our big official tour and see the farmhouse and the rock house and everything there is to learn about Laura and Almanzo and Rose, it's just like coming to Disneyland for me. And you can't go to Disneyland without a pair of ears, and you can't come here without a proper bonnet. So Vicki is going to help me select the perfect bonnet to go with my prairie dress today so we can get started on our tours. So let's go, Vicki. Shall we?
Let's go.
Okay.
I
think that goes really pretty with this
do
bonnet.
too. Look how it's picking up that
What do
red.
you think, everybody? Look at the beautiful bonnet.
I think that's
this one's a winner.
I do too.
So we'll keep a running tab. Are we good with that?
Yep.
It's you. Is it me?
It's you. Yeah.
And the ladies would tie them on the side. They wouldn't tie them right under the neck. They'd tie them on the side. How many times did we see Ma always tie her bonnet on the side? She had the most beautiful bonnets, didn't she?
Yes,
She really did. So I'm going to probably knot this and wear it in the back, but it's a sunshiny day.
It is pretty.
I might keep it on. So let's go ahead. We'll put a nice little knot. So now we're dressed the part, but Vicki has a surprise for me. She and I have been in communication for a while before our visit, and she has something set aside special for me. I'm very thrilled about it because I've always wanted a beetle bag. So Vicki was kind enough to put a beetle bag aside for us, and we're going to go grab that now so I can share it with all of you, because this is a bag that was quilted and hand sewn by Charlotte Stewart, who played Miss Beetle in the series. And I wanted one when we went to Walnut Grove, and I didn't get one. I was speaking with Vicki, and she was kind enough to put one aside because you just had a big event here.
We did. Wilder Day.
How many people did you have come through last weekend?
Well, on Friday we had 341, and on Saturday it was over 1,100.
Wow. And I was afraid they were all going to sell out, and I was going to get a beetle bag. But she put one aside for me so I could have one. So I appreciate that so much.
We got you covered.
So let's go grab it.
Yeah. All right, Alicia, so here you go.
Let's
see.
Look at the beautiful colors.
Oh, it's a gorgeous one.
Oh, look. And it's got
Michael
on the
in
front.
there.
So not only who wouldn't want Miss Beetle to be their teacher, because we grew up with Miss Beetle as our teacher on the Louse of Prairie, but who wouldn't want Pa? I know as a little girl I wanted Pa to be my Pa. Did you too?
No.
Yeah.
He was too Hollywood for me.
He was too Hollywood. He was a caring man in the episodes. So look at that, Michael Landon. So we have a beetle bag. So that is one thing off of my bucket list. Thank you so much for putting that aside for me. I appreciate it
You're welcome.
so much.
It was our pleasure, Alicia.
I love it. And to know that Charlotte made this is just so special. She's such a sweet lady from what I understand. I wish I could have met her. Planned our trip for the wrong weekend to meet everyone who was coming out for Wilder Days, but I'm grateful for the bag.
Yeah, she was fabulous, by the way. We
I hear
loved
she
Charlotte.
is.
Yeah, and she was a trooper, and she just kept signing and signing and signing, and she wouldn't stop, hardly for lunch.
Oh,
But,
goodness.
yeah.
And how old is she now?
Oh, she's crossed over 80.
I was going to
know
say,
that.
I thought she was 80, 81 or 82, right in there. Bless her for just keeping on and doing everything that she does for the fans, because we do love Miss Beetle.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, let's move on. home here at Rocky Ridge and the museum and the gift shop and all the wonderful things, all Laura Ingalls and Almanzo and Rose. And I asked her to please share with all of you one question that when she has all of these wonderful fans of Laura show up and they ask all of the questions, what question would she wish they would ask? So she's right off camera here and she's going to relay to us what question she wishes fans of Laura's would ask. And what is that, Susie?
I wish that they would ask more about Laura's writings of the books and actually writing them herself. We get questions about whether Rose helped write those books, and so we wish that they would ask and look more into the books about them.
Okay. And if they were to ask, what is your understanding and your belief about how much Rose participated? We know that Laura wrote these stories.
She did write the stories, but I think Rose participated in helping edit them and getting them published. She knew the insights to publishers because she had already published her books.
That's what I believe
So
as well.
that's what I think.
So all credit to Laura with the help of her lovely daughter.
I wish people would ask more about her as a multifaceted lady. She wrote for the Missouri Rulist from 1911 to 1924. She wrote about many different topics, human interest, even an article about cursing, just different little things about that, being a homemaker. Well before the Little House books, she was published. And then her stories of her letters back to Almanzo here in Mansfield in West from Home. You can get a real voyeur into their view into their relationship because you're reading the letters she wrote back to her husband while she was out visiting Rose in 1918 out in 1915
In San Francisco.
in San Francisco. Yeah.
They had some really nice travels. Well, Vicki, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you've done for us today. I've had a wonderful time. Changed my shoes because my feet are killing me, and we're going to walk up to the farmhouse. We're going to do a little crocheting and go on a tour, and then we're going to go over to the rock house that Rose had built for her parents. Inside Laura and Almanzo's white farmhouse, built in what year? What year did he finish?
He finished this room in 1913.
1913. It took 20 years to build.
17.
17, yeah. Close. I'm off a little bit on my history. But we're inside and we're with Michelle. Michelle is a docent here at the Laura Ingalls Museum and Rocky Ridge Farm here. And she handles the tours here in the home. And she wants to share with us something that's very unique. It has a unique history, and because of Michelle, some of the questions about this unique item are now a little clearer. So Michelle, why don't you tell us, first of all, thank you so much for spending time with me.
Yes, of course.
And why don't you tell us what it is that you discovered that is pertinent to Laura and Almanzo's home?
Okay. Well, over all the many years that we've had this house open for touring, this tapestry has always been in the home. Now, I'm not sure if it's always been hung right there or not, but we do know it's always been here. We just didn't know the history behind it. If Laura didn't write about it or talk about it or someone didn't share it, we don't know that information. That was one of those items. So we would just simply tell people we don't know where it came from. It was just here. Well, last winter in December, I was cleaning in here. I'm the museum specialist during the off season, and so I go through and clean items. I was upstairs on that day, and I was going through one of the closets. There was a large box full of old newspapers that were discolored and starting to fall apart. And being curious, I decided to look through them, and in the middle of those old papers was a file folder completely preserved. Well, it just looked out of place. So I removed it, and as I opened it up, there was the pattern for this tapestry. Well, I knew what I had. So, of course, I came running, but I had to compare it. So I came running down those stairs, and I was the only one in the house. So I'm screaming because I'm excited. So I come down to hold it up, and there is, you know, the perfect thing. The pattern matched the tapestry. So then I began to send messages to the curator, Tana Redmond. She was on vacation at the time. And so I had to wait for a week for her to get back. Once she got back, she did the research, and I helped her with a lot of that. But it was discovered that Laura had mailed in $1 to the magazine, the Woman's Day magazine, Woman's Companion, that we now have in there. It's not Laura's magazine, but it's just like it. And she sent in that $1, and they sent her back the canvas there, the burlap, along with the pattern and the instructions, the needles, the blue and red thread.
They sent the entire kit.
They sent everything to her for $1.
Wow.
And Laura herself made this in 1936.
So my understanding when I saw it in the museum, I thought it was a knitting pattern. It's a tapestry needlepoint pattern.
Needlepoint.
Okay.
It's called Knights and Ladies.
Knights and Ladies.
So we now know that Laura herself made that.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
a
amazing.
brand new discovery in this house.
Yes, and
Yeah.
you know, that's something, that's your legacy.
It is.
One of many, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah, it's exciting. Every time I get to share that with somebody, I get goosebumps all over again.
I was just going to say,
relive
I have goosebumps.
Yeah, I relive it every time. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Just, yeah, it's thrilling. Yeah, yeah. And I was absolutely thrilled.
It actually changes history now.
It does.
It does. Because now you know for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of people just speculated, and from what I understand, over the years, even historians would come in here and try to give their 2 cents on, well, we think this or we think that. You know, it always to me looked like Snow White and the dwarves, because that's, you know, what you've got in the knights and everything. But it was all speculation. We just never knew. And the furthest thing from my mind was that Laura made that. My guess was that Rose had purchased it when she was in Europe.
In her travels.
In her
That's what I
travels,
thought.
I would
because
think.
so many items came from her, so that was my guess. But to put all of those things together and realize Laura made this, and she bought it on purpose.
Yes.
And,
You know,
and what was the name again of it?
Knights and Ladies.
Knights and Ladies.
Yeah.
And could you imagine if somebody would have come through and kept that mindset that they didn't think it really had anything to do with Laura, and they had disposed of it or put it somewhere else?
I can't even imagine. Well, and my thought was, okay, these papers have been up here for all of these years since 1957. You know, and there's been people that have helped organize things here, people on the board and things like that, and they just, you know, stuffed all those newspapers in a box. Well, of course, a couple of those people were contacted. Did you know this was in here? Has this been discovered already? Is this part of it? And no one knew that pattern was in that box. And my thoughts were, these could have been just tossed out with the trash. The mice could have eaten them up. They were starting to deteriorate already. And so with that thought, and we also found many patterns that Laura had cut out of the Kansas City Star newspapers, and a lot of her pillows, like that one over there, those patterns, those are the patterns that she used. A lot of the things that she made, she used simple little patterns that she cut out of the magazine. We found a stack of those in that same box.
Resourcefulness. I'll share with you because you don't know this story yet.
Okay.
And we'll share it here. Instead of me putting it into a prologue or anything for our viewers, I'll share it here with Michelle because I think you'll get a kick out of this.
Okay, yeah.
My husband and I, Papa Jim, we had stayed at a bed and breakfast in Julian, California. It was a bed and breakfast from an old hotel that was built in the 1800s. And every day at 5 o'clock, they opened the parlor for tea.
Oh.
And in the parlor are all the old tables and all the old games and old magazines and books. And you're encouraged to come down and have tea or cider.
Oh my goodness.
So we went down into this parlor one day, and we were a party of 4. And I got up to get my cider, and instead of sitting down back at our party, there was an elderly man and his wife sitting at a table. So I thought, I'm just going to go sit with them and introduce myself and talk to them.
Yeah.
Sat down and spent a little time with them. And before I left, I said, is there anything interesting you'd like to share with me about your life? Everybody has an interesting story.
Sure.
And he says, well, when I was a little boy in Missouri, when I lived in Missouri,
And this is in California?
this was in California.
Okay.
When I was a little boy in Missouri, my mother would write letters to her family, but my mother wasn't well educated, so she knew that she had grammar problems and spelling problems. So anytime my mother would write a letter to her mother or her aunt, we would go to our neighbor's home, and our neighbor would sit and go over everything with my mother to help her correct her letters. And he says, and there was always cookies, and I would just sit on the floor and play while my mother and our neighbor had coffee, had tea. We all had cookies. He says, and we would stay until Almanzo came home. And of course, Almanzo, he said Almanzo.
Yeah.
And I have goosebumps now. And of course, my other party of 3 are sitting going, what are you doing? You need to come back. You're bothering that old man.
Yeah.
But he says, we would stay until Almanzo came home.
So then
And
you had to
goosebumps.
ask.
I said, Almanzo. Laura and Almanzo goes, well, yeah, they were our neighbors. The Wilders were our neighbors growing up. Now, I don't have his name. Wow. Have no idea, but it had to have been within walking distance.
Yeah.
And they would come over here anytime his mother would write a letter, and Laura would proofread it for him.
Oh, my goodness.
Can you imagine?
Oh,
could you imagine if I would not have sat down and asked that man to share a story with me, to not have that connection?
Oh, I wish you
And-
had his name, because that's
I do too.
Man.
I do too. And he was very elderly at the time.
Yeah.
And I believe he said at the time that he would come here, he was maybe 5 or 6. So it had to be before Almanzo passed, because he would still come in from the fields. So he was old. I'm going to say he was
They
at
had
least in his
neighbors.
80s.
Yeah.
So one of those neighbors, that would be something interesting. On another visit, we'll see if we can go to the county assessor's office
Yeah.
and
to
see if
see
we
who
can
that is.
find who would be in this area that
Because
had
we-
a child that age around that time.
Yeah, what time was that about? Do you
That
remember?
was around 2011.
About 2011.
And the family
And he
that we were
was
with
he was
lived
an
here.
elderly man, so
Yeah, but when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, could you imagine being a little kid coming over here? And so it had to be at a time too, in this house, not the Rock House.
Yeah.
It had to be this house, so we'd have to really narrow down those dates.
Yeah. Because there's not many of those people left.
No, I'm sure he's still not here.
Yeah.
Unless, I'm sure he was an octogenarian at the time. That was 10 years. Maybe in his 90s, he certainly could still be here. Maybe he'll see this. Maybe somebody will bring that to his attention. But
There is one lady that's still in town that, I know her. She worked at the school as a secretary for many years. And she was a small child, and her family knew Laura. And actually, the house that's across the road, the half rock, half wood, that was built for her aunt and uncle, the Procks. And they were kind of the caretakers. They helped Almanzo with the farm and everything. And as he got older. And so Cleo is her name, and she's in her 80s now. And she used to work out here too. But she would come over as a child and play in Laura's yard. And, she's told us all kinds of stories in the past. So she's the only person that actually knew Laura that's still alive in town. So.
unless we can find that gentleman.
Unless you
Well,
can
in
find that
town.
man.
In town,
Yeah.
yes.
in
but unless we
town.
can
But
find
who
the
lived here at
gentleman.
that
Would be
time?
amazing.
Yeah, I believe he was around 6. And he says he remembers sitting on the floor
Wow.
while the ladies had coffee or tea.
That's wonderful.
And went over the
Went
letter.
over the
And went over
letters.
the letters.
Yeah.
And so I
That is
I
remarkable.
pinch myself all the time, because if I wouldn't have stopped and taken that time to spend time with
Thank
him.
goodness you stopped. Yeah.
You
Listen.
never know.
Yeah. Listen to your instincts.
And
at
I
the
have to be
time,
honest
you know?
with you, at the time, even though I was a big fan of Laura and Little House on the Prairie, that was the TV version and the books. But I hadn't gotten far enough in the books before I got married and became a mom to realize that they'd actually come to Missouri. So when he told me this, I thought he was fibbing, and I said, they lived in Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah.
And he said, no.
No.
He says they moved to Missouri. And he knew all the details. He shared the details to prove me
Yeah.
that I was wrong when I said, no, Walnut Grove's in Minnesota.
Yeah.
He goes, no,
two
after
years
this.
at Walnut Grove, about 2 years
Yeah.
in Walnut Grove, and a lot of people don't get that because
No.
that show. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
wonderful. We love the show. We embrace the show. The actors come here and visit and make trips and things like that, and we get a lot of visitors coming that have only seen that show.
Mm-hmm.
Once we start talking, though, then we can kind of bring in. Go and read those books because you're going to love them even more.
Right,
Because
right.
that's the real story. Laura's real story are in those books. And
Right.
she loved Mansfield for 63 years. She lived here. This was her home.
I think it's funny that
Yeah.
Manly,
Manly,
Almanzo.
Manly, yeah,
Yeah.
Mansfield.
Almanzo. Yeah, I had to correct several people throughout
Almanzo.
the day. Almanzo and all kinds of names, and they're like, "What is it?" And I said, "It's Almanzo."
Right.
You know, she got Manly from Almanzo.
So we've gone through our tour with Michelle. It's a beautiful home. If you get the chance to come down to Rocky Ridge here in Mansfield, Missouri, do take the time to come and take the tour of this beautiful home that Almanzo built for Laura, and they lived here for so many loving years. On the way out, I asked Michelle, is there a specific question that you wish your visitors would ask you? And if so, let's ask it and answer it now. And we're gonna have Laura here confirm. If I don't know what the question is, it might not even involve Laura. But Michelle, what is the question you wish people would ask and that they knew?
Yeah. I believe it would be, what else did Laura do? She was a pioneer girl. She was a farmer, a farmer's wife, a homesteader, and then she became a world famous children's book writer. But what did she do in the town, in the community? And through my process of research, she was part of this community, but she started clubs. She started several clubs in town. She was part of the Eastern Star, which was part of the Masonic clubs. But she started a group called the Athenians in town. She started a club called the Justimirs, which actually was in different states, but she started their section of it and would travel to Hartville in different towns, and she held office there. And so she was a club member. She actually helped get started. She traveled around after she started writing for the Missouri Ruralist newspaper. A lot of people don't know that. But she traveled around to help get powder rooms put into buildings in town for the ladies to have somewhere to go when they went to town, because they didn't have a restroom or a place they could go. It was only for men. So she was part of that.
Instrumental.
She got so many things into action. So,
Laura,
yes.
because we benefit from that.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'll remember that. I'll remember
Yeah.
what I take those today before I leave Mansfield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do that, because we take it for granted.
We
But
do.
she was instrumental in that.
You were sharing earlier about how I thought it took 3 months for them to come here from De Smet, but you said 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
And we've been reading her book about their journey down here, her diary.
Yes.
And can you imagine on a day like today, it's a beautiful day, but when they traveled in the wagon, it would be like 100 degrees inside the wagon.
Yeah.
And we're reading this as we're driving down here, and we've got the air conditioner going.
Yes.
And the sun's coming through, and it's making me a little overheated, but you have to be grateful that we're not traveling weeks and weeks and weeks to get here.
Exactly.
We made it several hours that we had the AC in the back. I know that they have the carriage down there that is a replica of what they drove here, but I would imagine not all three of them would sit in front. Somebody had to ride in that wagon and in that 100-degree weather for hours on that.
And Rose would spend a lot of time back there, because the front wagon seat, it was difficult, for 3 people to sit there. So Rose spent a lot of the time in the back. Yeah.
But when they stopped and camped, they'd make her bed in the front, in front of the bench.
Yes.
And they would sleep in the back.
Right.
So, very, very neat.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
You're
Michelle.
welcome.
It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure.
Hey, you ain't much taller than she is.
Not by much. It's much more peaceful here than it is over at the White Farmhouse. So we're sitting just outside the office for the tour for the rock house that Rose built for Laura and Almanzo, her parents. And the acorns are bombarding us. So thankfully we are underneath a little cover here so we're not pelted with acorns. What a beautiful spot. I can see why they would have enjoyed living in both spots. This really is lovely.
So I assume you're all fans of Little House books, right? Or maybe the TV show. Do any of you know much about Rose, Laura's daughter? Maybe a little bit? Yeah. Alright, well most people know Laura Ingalls Wilder to be worldwide famous for the Little House books. But most people don't know that Rose was a very famous and wealthy author long before her mother. And she was the one that encouraged Laura to write down her childhood memories and helped her get the Little House books edited and published. And that all started here at the Rock House. This is where Laura and Almanzo lived for the next 7.5 years. And in the meantime, their daughter Rose lived over at the farmhouse, and that is where she did her writing. Laura began writing the Little House books here at the Rock House, and then Rose would type up Laura's handwritten manuscripts, edit those, and send them off to get published. And then in 1936, Rose moved away. That is when Laura and Almanzo said they missed the old place, they saw their farmhouse was empty, and moved back home to live there until they passed away. And that is where the last half of this series were written. Now, of course, you're able to see the Rock House, how it was when Laura and Almanzo lived here. As we go room by room throughout the tour, I'll talk about what's been replaced and what is original. Real quick though, outside, most everything you see out front here, except for obviously the mums and things like that, is original to the home. The rocks, the bricks, the windows and doors, and even the roof is almost 100 years old and original to the home.
I did have one quick question.
Yes.
Are the stones on the outside, are they native to this area?
It's not documented, so I can't say for sure.
Okay.
It's very likely. These are the kind of rocks we have in the area,
Okay.
and it's a very rocky place.
And what about the trim color?
Yes, it is original.
Okay.
We recently found out this last winter that this was the original color, and it was professionally repainted this last spring.
Very nice. Thank you. So we've just finished up with our tour here at the Rock House that Rose had built for Laura and Almanzo. Beautiful little home. We saw so many characteristics of the home that we can relate to our own farm home. And Abigail is with us, but she's off camera. But we're going to ask her, we wanted to ask her a question, just like we did all of the other ladies. And here's my question for Abigail. If you had your choice, would you want to live in the Rock House or would you want to live in the farmhouse? Which one would you choose and why?
That is a hard question. I think I would choose the Rock House just because I have been in places with a lot of the same kind of architecture, style and characteristics of the Rock House, for instance in Europe, and it just reminds me of faraway places that I've traveled to.
It's familiar.
Mhm.
All right.